In the years leading up to the civil rights movement, a young man named Langston Hughes began to emerge as a prominent poet, playwright, and activist in American society. Langston Hughes began his hobby of writing poetry as a junior in high school. Despite being a common name in American society, Langston Hughes was not born into instant success like many white poets and artists saw, and poetry therefore stayed a hobby with Hughes, unable to spread his poetry in American society. Instead of following the path of white poets who strived to make a career out of poetry, Hughes opted to occupy many manual labor jobs such as a cook, a launderer, and a waiter. Hughes began to give up on this dream of becoming a poet and making a living off of it. Him giving up on this dream was not unjustified, however, as no person of color had ever made a living from literature, whether writing novels, poems, or short stories. Hughes, despite his unsuccessful career or hobby of poetry, did not give up on his dream of becoming a poet. As he would state later in life, always hold fast to dreams. Hughes would stick to this motto even when working at the bottom of American society as a busboy. While working as a busboy, Hughes shared his poems with Michael Linsday, a famous poet, who then shared his discovery of a new African American poet with newspapers, leading to Hughes's success. This spread of Hughes's poems was an anomaly for people of color pursuing the arts. However, it still gave hope to many young blacks to make it in a world dominated by whites. Hughes's poems after this started to become better known in American society, causing him to earn a scholarship to Lincoln University. After this, Hughes would then become the first person of color to make a living from literature. With the rise of Langston Hughes' poems in American society, he became a leading light of the Harlem Renaissance, which centered around the artistic expression of life as a Black American through film, music, and literature. During the Harlem Renaissance, Hughes pioneered a style of poetry called jazz poetry, which combined all of the parts of the Harlem Renaissance, novels, plays, and jazz music into one form. Through all these forms of artistic expression, Hughes's goal was to portray life as a Black American in an unfiltered manner, rather than the sugar-coated manner that other Black poets portrayed African American life as. Hughes did not stray away from presenting the struggles of life as a Black person, even when it was unattractive to the style of life that many Blacks pursued. Many critics, however, thought this unfiltered depiction was unattractive to the Black community and African American life as a whole. Hughes, however, saw it as the most significant way of showing what life was like for Black Americans, and his truthful poetry was the epitome of the Harlem Renaissance, which depicted African American life in a style unseen in American history. Hughes said his lively poetry found more truth and profound significance in American society than the silver-lined and covered-up poetry that other white and Black poets together wrote about. An important part of Black History Month is celebrating people of color who left an impact on American history, and Langston Hughes did exactly that by revolutionizing Black artistic expression. Langston Hughes through his revolutionary poetry style, was able to speak directly to Black Americans in Harlem and across the country that no writer had ever done before. Even today, Hughes's poems are looked back on as a first-hand account of what life was like for Black Americans. While his poems were a form of activism in a national context, Hughes also did the best to serve his community in a form of local activism. He made a profound impact on his neighborhood of Harlem in New York City. He noticed that many young Blacks in Harlem were limited in pursuing the arts, and he therefore opened multiple theater companies in Los Angeles and Harlem, which gave hope to young Blacks wanting to pursue artistic expression. And Langston Hughes, as a whole, was a poet who revolutionized the style of poetry that portrayed Black life in an unfiltered and lively context. And despite many critics, he pushed on in his dream of becoming a poet to become the first African American to make a living from literature.